everyone, I'm Kaitlyn.
And I'm Mo.
And this is Team Get Ovary It.
We're an all-female team participating in the greatest motoring adventure on the planet, the Mongol Rally.
We'll be driving 10,000 miles across mountains, deserts, and unknown terrain.
And along the way, we hope to spread our feminist and environmental ideals.
Join us here as we share our stories, thoughts, and interviews as we get ready for the Mongol Rally 2023.
Third time's the charm, I hope.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. For this month's episode, we will be interviewing Shannon Cain, who recently conducted a sex-positive feminist online dating experiment via Tinder as a response to the striking down of Roe versus Wade. We thought the idea was extremely interesting and important considering today's, how can I say this, feminist climate. Anyway, it's very challenging for feminists at the moment. And of course, if you are a feminist yourself, you would want to find a feminist partner. So without further ado, please welcome Shannon, who will hopefully shed some light on this. And would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners?
Hi, yes, I'm Shannon Cain. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to this conversation. I'm a writer living in Paris, and I've just spent, I'm an independent author and an editor and writer, and have spent some time exploring the dating scene here in Paris. I've been here for about 8 years.
Wow, that's really nice. And I think I heard that you spent some time in Paris and then you moved to the south of France, and then are you back in Paris now?
Yes, actually, that's right. I've been in France total for 8 years. I was in Paris for a while, and then I spent 3 years down in the south in a small village just north of Nice. And then during the pandemic, I came back to Paris.
Oh, interesting.
Just as it was winding down, I showed back up here. I had enough of isolation in a very small village. I was ready to come back.
Yeah, I understand. Totally understandable. Okay, so then can you explain what inspired you to conduct this experiment?
Well, post-pandemic, I think my attitude was changing a little bit around dating, and I was looking for a different kind of connection. Beforehand, and as I had just arrived in Paris, it was a time of fun and learning and getting the culture down, getting the language down, meeting people. And then I met somebody, and we were together for a little over a year. And then the pandemic, we split up. Then the pandemic struck, and by the time it was all, it's not over yet. By the time people are coming out of it, I was like a lot of folks, just feeling really isolated, really sad, really. It was hard to be single during that period. I wasn't, I was glad that I had split up with my ex because, frankly, we would probably have bunkered up together, hunkered down or whatever together, and kind of rode through the whole experience, and it would have been a disaster. So I was glad to not be in that relationship anymore, but it was really hard to be alone during all of that. And so now that, coming out of it, it feels like I'm looking for a different kind of connection. And so going into this, what I'm calling my feminist kink experiment, where I'm requiring feminism as a bottom line. It for me, it feels like I'm saving myself a lot of time and energy, saving myself a lot of grief, a lot of heartache, a lot of, just shaving my legs and getting excited and, going down to meet someone who turns out to be a blowhard or a closet sexist or whatever. And I have found it's been an enormous saving of time. I haven't had any greater success in terms of meeting people, but it's been a really interesting experiment, and I feel better about the whole dating experience doing it this way.
Yeah, I'd imagine, we talked briefly before starting recording this episode, and yeah, I would imagine that just kind of coming out with that off the bat, I need someone who's a feminist would definitely save a lot of wasted time on dates that are just ultimately disappointing and lead nowhere. So yeah, I think that's it's efficient. It's very smart. It's a smart way to approach dating.
Well, it was my screening question. And the screening question changed with this experiment. Before it was, what do you feel about feminism? How do you feel about feminism? And that invited all kinds of, evasive horseshit responses, frankly, that
Mhm.
just kind of, I really couldn't get to the kernel of it. I mean, it's easy to talk about equality and say the right thing. Um, but when you ask a man to say the words, I am a feminist, that's a
Mm.
whole other story. And that clarified things a lot for me because they will do the dance. They'll go all around saying all kinds of things around, how they respect women, how they grew up with women, how they have daughters, how they believe that salary parity is important, how they all their friends are women. I mean, they'll go on and on, but I will still press them and say, okay. They'll give me those responses, and I'll say, okay, great. Are you a feminist? And they'll respond some more. What do you mean by feminist? And I'll say, well, what my personal definition of a feminist is a person who says, I am a feminist. Like, period. It's not that.
It's simple, yeah.
It's pretty simple, and whatever the definition is to you is your business, and that's up to us to figure out later on whether that aligns, with one another. But for now, I just need to know that you're not afraid of the word, and that you're kind of down with the movement, you know, before
Yeah.
I even want to sit down and have a drink with you.
Yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, it is really interesting, and I feel like I've noticed that too, just whenever people are avoiding committing to something, like, either it's just saying, like, a yes or a no, and like you said, dancing around it, like, that also says a lot. Like, their silence is speaking volumes, I guess, as we could say, right?
Yeah,
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 and then it
exactly,
just
exactly.
makes me totally suspicious of them.
Yeah,
Like,
indeed. I mean,
yeah.
I have a rich collection of responses from guys who are avoiding the F word.
Mhm.
I keep screenshots. It's entertaining, and it's good material for my memoir.
Would you like to
Um,
share some of those, I guess, right now? Might as well.
Sure, I have them. I have a collection of, I don't know. There's a section in the book called "The Unmatched," and it's
Oh,
just
okay.
just made up of screenshot dialogues. Here's a guy named, I'll just call them by their first initial. A guy
Mhm,
named G. I say, "What do you think of feminism?" This was
mhm,
early on before I had shifted the conversation, the question.
mhm,
And his response is a long series of texts. Everything
mm,
depends on the definition you give it, he says. It's for
mhm,
equality between humans, whether man or a woman, yes. But today's feminism that criticizes all the words and the wrongs of our time, no way. I have the great respect for women. I'd like to still admire them for who they are, for that which differentiates them by their femininity, but I'd still like to open the doors for them. This is
mhm.
2022, and
Wow,
I'd still like to be able to open doors for women. I mean, this was last week. Um,
that's pretty wild.
Here's a guy named E. I grew up around women, raised by a single mother. I have 3 daughters. I never recognized any of these differences. As for current feminist thinking, I'm much more reserved. It often forgets that there cannot be a feminine identity without a masculine one, and vice versa, and that the correlations and complements of the two cannot be defined and constructed without the other. This is like old school baloney. This is 1970s arguments
Yeah,
against second wave feminism.
right. Yeah, oh, yeah, exactly.
Right, right. And often they're coming up against, I get these questions against what they're calling neo-feminism. This guy, P, he says, I said, what do you think of feminism? He says, if it's intelligent feminism, I'm all for it.
I don't
Right? As if there's a, there's
Yeah,
a, there's a stupid kind of feminism.
right, yeah.
Um,
What does he mean by that?
yeah, yeah. And then, some
Hmm.
of them are. I asked one guy named Jay, are you the feminist man I'm looking for? And he goes, up to you to discover that, wink emoji. And
Uh,
your profile really speaks to me, pretty legs.
yeah.
So there's that kind of there's that kind of response where you really, they're saying it because they know they know what I want to hear, or they
Oh,
think they know what I
exactly.
want to hear. Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty wild. This is just kind of reminded me, I mean, like, this is not really related to feminism, but I remember I went on a Tinder date with a guy, and I don't mind going out with people who are shorter than me. It does not bother me at all. I know some people are kind of stuck up about it, but whatever. If you've got like a, nice personality and we get along really well, the height does not matter. And then this guy lied on his profile about his height, and I met him and I was just like, wow, this guy's really cute. Like, we were having a lot of fun, but then like he for in Korea, I live in Korea, and then so the Korean move for men to kind of get back to your apartment is they'll say, "Oh, it's so late and my house is really far away." Instead of just
Okay.
asking, "Do you want to have sex?" Like instead of just coming out with it, they'll kind of like make up this weird story about not being able to go home. So he did that, and then I was like, "Ugh, I don't like this guy
Uh-huh.
anymore." And then just
Uh-huh.
ask
Uh-huh.
directly. Just say like, "Do you wanna have
Say
sex?" And
it.
I'll probably say yes. Like, but anyway, and then I became a little bit annoyed with him, and then I asked him about his height, and I was like, "There's no way that you're as tall as you said you were. You're at least like 2 inches shorter than that." And I said,
Yeah.
"Why did you lie about your height on your profile?" And he's like, "Oh, because girls won't date me." And I'm like, "Yeah, but then you go on the date with the girl and she's gonna know you're a liar." Like,
Yes. Yes.
and it's just like,
Yes.
and it's all
I know, it's impossible. As a tall woman too, I mean, this is a thing, I put tall on my profile and I
Mm,
used to, at least. Now the feminist thing, I don't put anything at all. But my former profile was just
mhm,
4 words. It was writer, American, tall,
mhm,
and feminist. That was it. It was like 4 things.
very
And
simple.
so the tall thing got really like how tall? I get how tall are you a lot.
Uh-huh.
And yes, I'm with you. I don't mind a short man at all.
Yeah.
But it's the
What
short
I
man
what I
syndrome,
exactly,
right?
that's the problem. It's like it's all these and it's all the lies from the outset, and it's just like and I've had
Yeah.
some male friends and I've called them out on it and stuff, but they're saying things like, if I wanna get a girlfriend, if I wanna get a date, I have to kind of trick them into dating me, and I'm like, "You don't. You really don't." It's just
No.
making a bad relationship. You're setting the foundations for lying and cheating and, like, all that anyway, it just,
Yeah,
drives me
it
crazy.
just makes a shitty first impression,
Yeah.
you know?
Just don't
And,
do it.
it doesn't get any better as they get older, I'm sorry to say. I mean, I think
Mm.
maybe they don't stop lying about their height, but they never stop being weird about it, you know?
Mm.
I mean, I've had guys at the end of the date who were like, I could, like, actually kind of tried to maneuver and position themselves in such a way that, like, I was standing at a lower level than they were at the time when it came to
Wow.
have the kiss, and just like, oh man, confidence is so sexy. And
Right.
if you're not going to be confident about your height, you know, not that
Yeah.
interesting.
Okay, and then how about second question, what methods did you use, if any, to qualify or quantify the results of the experiment?
Well, the experiment was super unscientific. I mean, I just started
Mhm.
it one night. It was a Valentine's Day,
Mhm.
and I was home on
Mhm.
Tinder, which is a depressing place to be on Valentine's Day. And I thought, what the hell, just to entertain myself, I'm going to start counting swipes just to
Mhm.
see, how many how many left swipes it takes to get to a right swipe.
Mhm.
Um, and it just kind of continued from there, you know. But I mean, it was hash marks in my notebook. It was wildly unscientific.
But I think I like the fact that because I know you sent me some graphs and stuff like the data that you compile. Like I mean, I don't think it's wildly unscientific at all. You got some data and then you arranged it in a certain way and like you're kind of like talking about it. So I think probably this is like a very sort of unique thing to do because I know a lot of people complain about online dating, but like now you actually do have proof.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so right, I can share what the proof is. You're right. I did make some attractive little graphs. I made
They're
some
very
funnel
nice.
charts. This is what I was doing on the weekend of Valentine's Day, making funnel charts about my swipes on Tinder and Bumble. So I
Hmm,
did 905 swipes, and I stopped there randomly, maybe because I just got distracted and
hmm,
decided that was enough. But for 905 left swipes,
mhm,
um, I got 49 rather right swipes. So these are
mm,
49 people that I was interested in looking at and talking to. Of those
Mm.
49, 24 matched with me.
Mhm.
So that was like about a 50% match ratio. And then of those 24, 13 we ended up messaging, or they messaged me. And often, here's also my rule, which is
Mhm.
seems kind of retro, but I usually do wait for them to message me, because part of my interest is I need to feel that they are interested. I just am not,
Yeah.
no longer to the point where I'm going to, chasing men is not, I know one outreach does not, one hello doesn't feel like a chase, but I feel like at this point in my life, I want them to be reaching out, whatever. It's just
Yeah.
my particular kink. Let's call it that.
No, that's fair.
Um,
And I heard like from a lot of guys, like they just kind of swipe right on everybody. Like they don't even actually check the profiles. Like
yeah, yeah,
when
exactly.
yeah.
I'm getting that
So
too.
yeah,
Getting some
I
guys,
think it
yeah,
makes sense to wait for them to message first just to see like if they are genuinely interested or they just, swiped on everybody.
yeah. That I've changed over the years. In the beginning, I've been online for about, oh gosh, 10 years on the dating site, starting on OkCupid back when it was,
Oh,
you know, different.
yeah.
And I was much different then. Now yeah, I used to give it, say, look at their profile and make some comment about something they'd said and put all of this effort into it. And then I realized that was fruitless.
Yeah,
so,
right.
so anyway, of those 13 that I
Mhm.
did end up messaging, then I asked the question, are you a feminist? And of
Mhm.
the 13, four of them passed the sniff test, in my view.
Oh.
Um, so of those four, one thing or another happened, and there were nobody. We actually never got to set a date. We never got past the point of saying yes, you're a feminist, and yes, I want to date you. So I got zero dates at all. And this is on my, I should say, this is on my vanilla profile. This is
Okay.
before I switched to the feminist kink profile.
Okay.
So I did it again then under the feminist kink
Mhm.
profile. And I guess I should read it to you, huh?
Yeah,
what
I'd
what
love to
the,
hear
what
it.
the profile says. Here is the new feminist kink profile. It reads, I have a kink for feminist men. Make me wet with your respect and kindness. Let me wrap my lips around your positive masculinity. Watch me orgasm in public on our first date from the joy of having been asked my opinion. Muscle
Mhm.
your way through the crowd of mainstream dude bros. Your enlightened confidence and egalitarian charm will bring me to my knees.
Nice.
After the Supreme Court shenanigans of June 2022, a lot of, I don't know if you noticed this too, but a lot of women on their dating profiles were changing were putting vasectomy only,
Mhm.
or on their profiles. And I just kind of went for a more Lysistrata approach, more a reverse Lysistrata, I should say,
Mm.
rather than withholding sex, saying, yeah, I'm not withholding. I'm choosing the ones who are with us. I'm choosing the allies.
Mm.
It's more of a carrot than a stick approach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like that. I thought I that was my well, I'm Canadian, but I have a lot of American friends, and then, of course, like, I mean, American politics does have a lot of influence internationally too, so I'm a little bit worried about, like, how it's gonna change, like, the Constitution and laws in other countries. So, my knee-jerk reaction, like, when I heard that news is like, "Okay, well, I guess I'm not having sex ever again." Like,
Right. And
really?
that is it's so destructive. I
Yeah,
mean,
it is very
for us to say, I mean, whatever for the guys, they'll be screaming and yelling, but it's punitive on all levels, just like
right.
patriarchy is, right?
Yeah, but I like your approach, it's good.
Yeah. And so after I changed it to the feminist kink profile, I was,
Hmm.
hoping that I'd have a better result.
Mhm.
I'll get to the punchline and say not really, but
Mhm.
in the meantime, there was like a different thing happened in the interim between the 905 swipes and what ended up being one date.
Mhm,
Um,
1.
one date. So
Wow.
whereas in the vanilla profile, I had swiped 49 times right to the
Mhm,
905, this is
mhm.
the behavior that surprised me. I swiped right of half as many times under the feminist kink profile.
Okay.
Um, I don't know. After I looked at the stats, I was like, wow, I didn't expect that somehow my behavior would change by having this
Mm.
outrageously, well, at least for Tinder, which is pretty mainstream, kind of this
Mhm.
outrageous sex positive profile. But it did. I
Yeah.
guess I was more reserved.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd say maybe by changing your profile, you also sort of focused your mind a little bit more, maybe, and then a
oh
little bit more
yeah,
discerning in the profiles. Could
hmm
be.
that
Yeah.
could be too. I probably also had some safety in mind. I was less
Right.
not gonna put myself out there with the ones that seemed a little bit iffy.
Mm.
Um, and so then, of those 24 that I swiped right on, I matched with 14 of them
Mhm.
and ended up messaging 11.
Mhm.
So the numbers are getting down to pretty much the same, I mean, statistically.
Yeah.
Two of those 11 turned out to be feminist.
Okay.
I set dates with both of them.
Mhm.
And one of them stood me up, and the other one was just boring, boring, boring.
Aw.
So there, that's kind of where I landed on at least on the statistics.
I can't believe standing I feel like that's such a teenager move, like when I was in college or something, I would expect to be stood up, like, as an adult, it
I
just seems
know.
really petty.
Yeah, and that was kind of rare because I hadn't been stood up, and especially in Paris. French men, I don't know. It happened to be more in the U.S., but
Okay.
I was in this kind of crowded terrace restaurant, typically French kind of romantic spot. Lots of
Mm.
people there overlooking the canal, and I'm sitting there, and there's this group of three young men, and they're like, "Madame, why is that chair empty?" And
Oh.
I'm like, because y'all are pigs. I just like went right at them. And they're like, "Oh la la," and it just turned into a whole fun, moment of dialogue with these guys who are way too young for me, but
Uh-huh.
we're really, really flirty, trying to defend the honor of their fellow Frenchmen. I'm like, how much more time should I give him? Should I give him 3 minutes? No, 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 give him 7 minutes.
Oh,
It was pretty hilarious. But yeah, that ended up being a date that stood up. I know, a grown man,
yeah, that's
not even a
insane.
text.
Right, like, I mean, if something comes up or even if you change your mind at the last minute, be like, "You know what? I actually don't wanna go out." Then, like, just say something.
Yeah, yeah. If they text and say they're going to be late, it's fine. I wait. But normally, I mean, other than that, they get 15 minutes flat.
Mm.
Um, and it actually weirdly happened to me again just last week. I was stood up, and I kind of had a feeling it might happen because he hadn't checked in with me and on that day. I was
Mm.
like getting out of the shower. I'm like, oh, I haven't heard from him, and so I texted, I'll see you in a minute. And when I was on the way, I still hadn't heard and realized, okay, this might not work. And so I sat there waiting for a bit, and 15 minutes. I texted back, is like, I'm not here anymore, and I went to
Mm.
get some sushi takeout. By the time I got back home, I was like, I was back in my jammies, taking off the bra, like I had my mouth full of sushi, and I checked into Tinder, and there's a message from him,
Uh-huh.
and it says to me, "I love your profile," and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Dude," I responded to him like I was practically lost the sushi, like spitting it out of my mouth. He not only stood me up, but then confused me with someone else. Yeah,
Mhm.
and the giveaway on that, I mean, it's a giveaway in any language, but particularly in French, he had reverted to the formal vous offense,
Oh,
right? So
yeah, I
he
got
was
it.
addressing me again as a stranger. I love your profile. I was like,
Huh?
normally I just like unmatch. I guess like those guys are not worth my time, but this one I couldn't resist. I was like, I said, seriously, you stood me up and now you're confusing me with someone else. And his reply it made zero sense at all. And he made
Okay.
no effort to explain himself. And he still hasn't days later. His reply was like, no, no, not at all. Period. That was it. Like,
Th
I'm
What does that
supposed to
mean?
just accept that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is he denying standing you up, or is he
I
saying
don't know. He's just like he just put his little French head in the sand and was like, nope, maybe like la la la, blocked his fingers in his ears, and I don't know, decided, and that was that.
That's so
There was another one
bizarre.
that stood me up. He didn't quite stand me up, but he also, like, on Saturday we set the date.
Uh-huh.
On Wednesday afternoon, I at three
Mhm.
o'clock I texted him saying, see you tonight.
Mm.
By 9 p.m. I still hadn't heard from him.
Mm.
And I'm just texting a friend saying, you know what? I think I'm getting stood up. I think I'm getting ghosted. And as
Mhm.
at that moment, my he pings me on WhatsApp, and he's
Okay.
like, "Oh, too bad I didn't hear from you until today. I was really looking forward to ravaging your body or something because we'd having this really sexy exchange beforehand."
Uh-huh.
And he was, yeah, that's it. Oh, too bad I didn't hear from you today. Until today. Like, we had just set the date 3 days earlier. So this says to me, okay, this dude is married, and
Oh,
and also looking to find someone he can manipulate. He's like,
probably. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
my friend. I sent the exchange to my friend, and they replied back to me, "What in the kingdom of gaslight is this?" I was like,
Oh, oh, I like
just
that.
hello. Like, I can read it. I checked in with you hours and hours before. So there's all that. There's that kind of games that goes on, and that
Oh,
too, for me, every time that happens, it's a gift. It's like,
mm,
saved me the time,
yeah,
saved me the energy of going down to the bar and sitting there and, you know,
yeah.
perhaps getting
That's
excited
yeah.
about a person who turns out to be
Ugh.
unreliable.
Yeah, that reminds me of a time, I think it was last summer, I had matched with somebody on Tinder, but, like, we just matched and we were talking, and then, like, immediately he was like, "Oh, do you have some time right now?" And I was like, 'cause he turns out he lives really close by, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure, actually, like, I'm free." It was a Sunday afternoon. "I'm free, let's go grab a beer." "Sure." So we just, like, kinda meet in the middle, and we just, like, get a beer, and he asked me, like, "What are you looking for?" And I was like, "You know what? Actually, at this point, I'm not sure." But, we'll see how it goes. We'll, like, meet a couple times maybe, and then he left very abruptly, which was fine, but he's like, "Oh, suddenly something came up, I gotta go," and I was like, "Okay, bye." And then he texted me a few days after that, and he said, like, "Can you meet me right now?" And I was like, I've got plans now, like, Sunday I was free, but I'm not free today." And then I said,
Mhm.
"But if you wanna meet, like, how about this day or this day?" And I gave him some options, and then he made, like, a noise, I guess, like
Yeah.
TCH kind of like a
Uh, uh-huh.
and then nothing. So, basically, like you were saying, like, he was just trying to see how far he could manipulate me and, like, how quick, like, I would come at his beck and call kinda thing, I
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
and, like, after that happened, I just kinda got angry, and I was like, Why?"
Mhm. Mhm. I don't know, it's that insecurity, it really is. I mean, one of the great things about online dating for me is that it reveals
Mm.
male insecurity in a way
Yeah,
that's just crystal clear. It's
yeah,
like, if you can't behave well online, then, what kind of person are you? If you
right,
can't be nice to strangers, it's really kind of the golden rule, isn't it?
right, yeah, it is.
So, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot about dating online that I find really revealing. I think people reveal more about themselves than they intend to, um,
Mm,
and especially in their dating profiles.
mhm,
Um, the dudes who are like, it's really hard to describe yourself, or come find out for yourself. What we'll talk, and that says to me, they are uncomfortable writing.
mhm,
They're uncomfortable probably communicating, and
mm,
no, that's not
yeah,
what I'm looking for either. So there's so many ways that it's just, I feel like online dating is a really efficient screening process.
mm,
People can do so much in person that they can't do on the internet. I know vice versa as well, but that's why you have
yeah.
the first date.
Yeah, it's so important. And then speaking of dates, I guess, so what was the best date you went on? And, like, what made it good? Why was it a good date?
Well, the best date I guess I went on, ended in the one that ended in a relationship that I was
Mhm,
involved for a year and a half. And,
mhm,
that's the date where it just clicks, you know it immediately. And
mhm.
there's one of my dates, this French guy introduced me to this concept of the 3-second rule, where
Okay.
apparently 3 seconds, in 3 seconds, on
Wow.
laying eyes on somebody, whether there's potential there, or whether it could be the one. So I've had 3-second moments a few times in my life, and then I had it again. But actually, this one, it took a little while longer because this was part of a process I was engaging in, having to
Mhm,
do with kissing first on my dates.
mhm.
I'd gotten to a point in my dating life where I was really bored, and I just decided on a different experiment. This is pre-pandemic, when you could still go around kissing people.
Uh-huh, uh-huh, yeah. Now it's
um,
all about the fist bumps.
yeah,
It's not
exactly.
very romantic.
I know, I know. Even the bisou is starting to come back here in France. The kissing on the two cheeks. Um,
I never even thought about that. Okay, yeah, of course, they
Oh
would
no,
have to, like,
oh no,
go
it
away.
was a very, very confusing time here in France, and it still is. I think
Oh,
the bisou, because this, it's just as common as shaking a hand. Um,
right.
so people kind of were doing an awkward dance around one another. Like, how do we greet? It was hard.
Mm,
Anyway, so I was certainly not gonna. This is all pre-pandemic when I was doing my Kiss First experiment, and
mhm.
I had those Kiss First dates with a handful of guys, and the last one was with the guy I ended up being with for a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah,
Alright, nice.
those are fun dates. Yeah, but his kiss. Well, I can describe it later because I've got something to maybe to share with you about those 7 Kiss First dates. But after the
Okay.
kiss, what made the date work was that he just. Well, frankly, I was involved. I'm obsessed with a certain American writer, James
Mhm,
Baldwin, and I mentioned James Baldwin to him, and actually, he was also that was one of my screening date questions. I would mention
mhm.
James Baldwin, and if my date knew who I was talking about and knew that he was someone that I could kind of click with culturally.
Right.
Um, and so, yes, this guy not only knew who he was, he said, "Oh, child preacher, 14 brothers and sisters, I think." I was like, "No, only 11." He goes, "Oh, okay." I was like, "All
Wow.
right, all right." So we connected on that level, and then also he was just incredibly sexy.
Mm,
Yeah,
very important.
yeah.
Oh. So how about the opposite? What about the flip side? What's the worst date? What made it bad?
Um, there are just too many bad dates, I think, to even to even point to the worst.
Uh-huh.
I had a kind of a bad one just last week that was sort of illustrative, I guess you could say, of bad dates.
Okay.
Um, this one was just with a blowhard, like your
Oh.
classic dude that just won't stop talking. And I find it ironic that the popular culture around women is that we talk so much when like we know how much airspace men take up. So I
Mhm.
was in this. He had a nice white beard, and he was very well put together. His name was Henri, and he just made me want to stand up and walk away as he was talking.
Oh.
And like I have this fantasy sometimes of what that would be like. What would I do the next time some dude like some blowhard in a nice suit who just starts the date, for example, admitting he's never been to the United States, and then he just starts informing me all about American politics, or like he
Uh,
goes, it's like he goes on some droning lecture about the quality of butter in Upper Normandy versus the quality of butter in Lower Normandy, and I have to sit there and listen to that for 15 minutes. And I mean, what if I just like reached for my purse and walked and left the restaurant without even looking back?
that would be
That night with
amazing.
this guy, I was like looking at the door, wishing I were walking through it. Um, so anyway, Henri kind of winds down his lecture about American economics, and then I said to him, it seems to me as if he was just explaining my own country to me.
Yeah.
And then
Oh.
he kind of raised his eyeball, and he's like, okay. He kind of took that in without comment, but then pivoted towards explaining fundamentals of life in France, as if I had just not finished telling him I've lived here for almost a decade. And like it was really
Mhm.
someone in this man's life had taught him how to like dominate a conversation.
Oh,
Clearly,
yeah.
by example. He was one of these kids that just grew up with somebody not letting him get a word in edgewise. So there was no way for me to respond, "Yeah, I understand," or "Yes, no, you don't need to explain," or just like "Shut the fuck up for a minute." There was like no
Mhm.
way. Eventually, I thought, okay, I'm going to model for him what an interesting conversation looks like in my world. And so I
Mhm.
told him this silly anecdote about a client of mine, which he loved. And then
Mhm.
he just kind of insisted that I write it as my next novel. He just like took over the story and just like gushed out his like average intelligence and like his very limited imagination and this huge ego, and he just like dictated the plot of my next novel to me. And I'm like shaking my head at him and frowning and like furrowing my brow, and he just keeps plowing right through, and he's like, "No, no, no, hang on," at the expression on my face, as though I have a
Mhm.
problem with his idea and not with his personality.
Aw.
Um, it just keeps interrupting me and interrupting me. And finally, I was like, you know what? If you have an idea for a book, you should just learn how to write one yourself. And this was that moment in the date where the guy realizes that he's with a woman he starts to be afraid that the woman is smarter than he is.
Yeah.
Opposed to the moment in the date that also often happens, where the guy realizes that he is sitting across from an equal intellect, and
Yeah.
that moment is really fun.
Yeah.
That's a very different thing. But this guy, no, Henri, he still was like, he had his finger raised between us, and kind of as if he were like expecting me to interrupt. And so naturally, I did. I kept interrupting.
Uh-huh.
He complained I wasn't letting him talk, and I was like, "Hey, do you think you've dumped all those useless words onto a minute ago?" Um, and then finally, and here's the thing, here's the phrase that has been tossed at me and you and all of us, all of our
Mhm.
lives. What you don't understand is,
Ah!
it's like, finally, I'm 58 years old. I've had enough of this. What you don't understand is, and it just came out of me. And I said, listen, don't presume what I don't understand. You are not in my head.
Yeah,
And
right.
he said,
Exactly.
it was like, chill, it's just an expression. And then, but by the time I got home, I'd been unmatched. It was pretty clear that was going to happen. But it was a bad date, but also in a way it was a good date, because I just I just let him have it. It wasn't one of those dates where most of the time, as we know, we just like suck it up.
Yeah,
The
right.
guy talks, you paste a smile on your face, the friendly grin, just to kind of,
Mhm.
and they mistake that for interest, and they just
Mhm.
keep going, and you've checked out long before, but they haven't looked at the expression on your face, and you're just checking your internal clock going, how soon can I finish this drink and get out of here?
Mhm.
um, I don't know, that date I had different kind of energy. I wasn't going to do it this time, so I just let him have it with both barrels.
And I think it's kind of interesting because I know for sure, like my mom is very conservative. So the way that I was raised was like, oh, you're a woman, you should always be kind and polite and like listen to
Right.
people and blah, right? And I'm just like, I'll be polite and kind to people who are polite and kind to me. But yeah, no, I've done the same thing, like, I've been, like, on horrible dates and talking to somebody, and they've been totally railroading the whole conversation, and I should say something, but I just don't not because I guess, like, my lifelong training of just being kind and polite, kicks in. But yeah, I'm at the point now too, like, where if I have another situation like that, I think I might just get up and leave, and
Yeah.
it's and partially because of, a friend of mine, he's a man, so but that's what he does when he's on a bad date, he'll just get up and leave, and I'm like, "Oh, you can do," and, like, it never really had occurred to me before that
That's
that was a
allowed.
possibility. Yeah, right, and I'm just like, "What do you mean I can just leave?" And I'm like, "So that's my plan." I'm gonna try, but it's like it's hard to break that habit of,
Yeah.
listening to people and kind of being nice and giving, like giving so much. Women are always taught, like at least the women that I know who grew up like in kind of conservative families like I did, like we're taught to give so much
Yes.
and just
Yes.
endure so much. And it's like,
Right.
no, I don't want
Right.
to.
Exactly.
My time
Exactly.
is precious. I got stuff to do. So,
Indeed. I mean, sometimes I also am kind of aware that, we're all living under this patriarchal system that is
uh-huh.
fucked up for both sides. And,
Yeah.
men get to dates, and the impression, at least I got when I was dating men in their 40s in particular, is
Hmm.
that they definitely feel the need to impress.
Mm.
And part of that is performance. And in the head, in a lot of male brains, performance means talking and
Mm.
impressing and dumping their knowledge and their resume, and not doing what we find impressive, which is saying, what do you think?
Mm.
It's
Right.
really not that, we find it quite simple. But there is a small part of me that has a little bit of sympathy for the guy who keeps talking, because I can see that it's almost like he's dancing as hard as he can. You know,
Mm.
when I see that it's somebody he's struggling in a way, even if
Hmm.
in his own kind of blowhard way, I am a little bit more gentle. I will say something like, I mean, this isn't very gentle, but I'll say, we've been here for 20 minutes. Can you ask me a question about myself?
Oh, that's good though. I like that.
And that, and that has worked on a few occasions. That really has worked, because the guy will like it resets something in his brain.
Mhm.
And he'll when it has worked, it's a beautiful thing to see, because he'll sit back and go, oh, okay. And he'll kind of take a breath and take a sip, and and then chill out, and that has worked. It's been nice. And then when it
Yeah.
doesn't, when they misbehave, it's like, okay, it's a shortcut to the date's almost over now.
Out of here. So did you only use Tinder, or do you make use of other dating sites? Which dating site do you think is the best overall?
Yeah, I'm now on 4 dating sites currently.
Okay.
Um, Tinder is just everybody's there. That's the thing with Tinder. It's just volume. On Tinder, I rarely run out. I don't know if you've ever gotten to the point on Tinder where it says there's no one else around you.
Yeah. No, I've been there. I've been there.
We've all been to that sad place in Tinder, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh God, all right, just like turn out the light and go to bed. Um, I don't get there nearly as quickly on Tinder. In fact, so far I haven't gotten there in this last round of dating on Tinder.
Okay.
But I joined Feels just 2 days
Mhm.
ago. Field. Um,
Field. Okay.
and I got like 100 swipes in before I got to the lonely place.
Oh.
There's really not so many people there. I'm also on Bumble and on
Mhm.
OkCupid. So,
Mhm.
the other sites beyond Tinder, they are a little more time consuming because there's more to the profiles and there's more to look at, and you get to take more time in your deliberations. But as it turned out, when I compared Tinder and Bumble, the outcomes were the same. Like
Mm.
fewer matches, same amount of time. Tinder for me is just it's like it's the public sphere.
Mm.
It's just like anywhere else in the world. It's a shopping mall. Everything bad about the world is also bad about Tinder.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, right. Because I think Tinder gets a really bad rap. People are always saying, Tinder's just for hookups, or you're always going to be disappointed when you meet, somebody from Tinder specifically. But
I do get that a lot. We get that when we share our dating stories. There's always somebody. Usually they're married, a
Mhm.
long term relationship,
Mhm.
or someone who has pre-internet. When they're like, oh well, what do you expect? It's Tinder. Or people who've had bad experiences on Tinder, or people who are ashamed about their own search for love or something. Tinder is a
Mm.
cesspool. It's just like it's a street corner for the dregs of society. And then they'll like look you right in the eye and let the irony escape them that they're talking about you. They're talking about me. I mean, I'm on Tinder.
Right.
A lot of people I know are on Tinder. People that I've met and fallen in love with, I've met on Tinder. Tinder is
Yeah.
reality. I mean, it's the world. Millions of people are there. It's like Starbucks. We all end up in line at some point or another.
Mhm.
So why do people think Tinder is like a, hotbed of bad behavior that doesn't compare to anything else in real life? I mean,
Yeah.
Tinder is no worse than meeting someone at senior prom. Senior prom is it's a nightmare. A singles bar, a sports match, a shopping center, Thanksgiving
Yeah.
dinner. That's no
Oh.
picnic either. Like,
True, true.
so,
Just on the road, on the street. Yeah.
right, exactly. And then, okay, so there's also like going out with friends. So we're comparing Tinder to shaving your legs, squeezing into something really uncomfortable, spending an hour in front of the mirror, spending a bunch of money on drinks just to
Mhm.
sit at a table with your girlfriends and yell small talk over blasting music, like waiting for some vapid pack of dudes that have been circling you to get drunk enough to feel like they can come say hello. You know,
Yeah.
I could be sitting on my couch doing in a much more efficient way.
Yeah,
And also,
true.
yes, you're right, meeting someone in public. I met somebody actually in the supermarket. It was the most cliche little meet cute in the supermarket.
Aw.
And he gives me his card. I'm like, oh my God, you're so cute. And I get home and I've got his card and I'm like, I wish there were a profile. Like,
Oh,
I know
yeah.
nothing about this guy. And
Yeah.
I went, and I'm like, I called him anyway because it was a meet cute. It was so Hollywood. And we went out, and like, I get into his car, and there's like a "What about Benghazi" sticker on the bumper. Like, what about the
Interesting.
emails or something on
Oh,
his bumper
oh.
sticker on his car?
Alright.
I was like, you know what? If he had had a profile, I would have swiped on him without even looking.
Right.
So, I mean, there's so much, and then there's the safety issues about being online. It feels like far more safe than just meeting somebody that you went
Yeah.
into the supermarket. I don't know anything about that guy with the Benghazi sticker.
Yeah, true. Because at least, like, if you meet somebody online, like you said, you see the profile, you see the photos, and then you also, probably have like a little bit of a conversation first.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then so there's also the people who are say, well, just friends would go out, meet like, friends and family. Tell everyone you know that you're single, and friends and family will set you up. So, like, seriously, how many times does that happen in life? Like that, like
Mm,
pretty much exactly never. I
yeah.
really think that's rom-com romance bullshit that really just doesn't happen on the daily. I mean, there was a guy that I met. We dated for a year. He was great. On our first date, we realized we had literally dozens of friends in common, in real life
Oh,
friends in the
okay.
same city. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were both single, both of us for more than a year. They both knew that, and they all knew that. All of our circle of friends, not
Uh,
one of them thought to introduce us.
huh.
We had to have, for that. We had to have Tinder.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, like that's what Hinge is, right? Hinge is kind of that. It's have you heard of Hinge?
Yes, I've heard of Hinge. Hinge is like that's my next one on the list to try. I
Yeah.
haven't checked out Hinge yet.
I've heard good things about it. I personally haven't tried it either, but like it's supposed to like compare your Facebook profiles or something and see if you have like you're supposed to match with people who are friends of friends and stuff. So,
Oh, okay. Okay,
yeah,
good.
I
All
think
right.
that's the idea. I might be
Yeah.
wrong.
Well, also,
Hmm.
things are also different in France. Like, okay, Cupid is still strangely popular here, whereas in the US, apparently, it's
Oh,
not so much.
yeah, I
Yeah.
remember OkCupid being popular when I was in like university, so 12 years
Yeah.
ago, I guess.
Yeah.
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 Oh, interesting.
Still working here.
Oh. And then is the experiment like ongoing or has it concluded?
Well, what's the conclusion, really? I mean,
Mhm.
the conclusion is, what does it take to fall in love? Maybe. I mean,
Mm.
what it ends when I found love. I mean, yes, the statistical part of the that experiment is over, but I am thinking
Mhm.
about, now that I'm kind of exploring the data, shall we say. Um,
Yeah.
I'm interested in looking at the difference between American dating and what's happening here in France.
Yeah.
I really do feel like, I mean, I knew this before I moved to France, that it's a terribly misogynist country. Um, it's retrograde in a lot of ways. Very, very advanced in a whole set of social issues for which I
Mhm.
admire and love this country, but also around, racism, sexism, homophobia. It's just like,
Mm.
oh my God. I do feel like I'm back in high school and, in the 80s, a lot of ways. It
Mm.
does feel like, Tinder in France feels like the halls of my high school when I'm kind of in sophomore year, looking around going, how am I going to find anyone worth loving in this field of testosterone monsters? But then again, it is, Paris is a global city, and
Mhm.
there are pockets of communities and of people that are progressive thinking and are creative and countercultural, and I'll find them. I know they're here.
I wish you luck. Yeah, I because I think France sounds surprisingly similar to Korea, I guess in that regard. Because like, oh, and especially now, there's like this whole resurgence of even among like very young people, like a lot of men and they're between like 20 and 30 years old are like going hyper conservative nowadays. So it's like
Oh,
so hard to find a guy who doesn't have, like you were saying, kind of like antiquated ideas about, equality or just anything. It's like, ugh. So
oh,
just
wow,
oh,
yeah,
it's
and you know what?
atrocious, and oh, the
Oh,
horror stories, the horror stories. I'm on some Facebook groups, like, I find, like, social media is very useful, to gather, like, these kinds of personal stories about dating or just about, culture or life in general, and I'm
hmm.
on a couple of Facebook groups, and just I wanna say every day there's a story of some girl who started dating a guy in Korea, and then now she's been abused or raped or abandoned, and she's, like, seeking legal advice. It's because
Wow.
yeah, and it's kind of a thing, like, and there's a lot of people who they get married, like, they're from, I don't know, some European country or South American country or, like, Southeast Asian country or even Russia, and they get married to, like, a Korean guy, and they're like, "Wow, he was so sweet at the beginning, like, he was really kind, he doted on me, and then, once we got married, just like a light switch just totally flipped."
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just from foreigners that I've heard that. I've also had that kind of conversation with my, like, I teach adults here, so with my Korean students, like, oh, my husband was really nice when we were dating, but then after we got married, not so much.
Wow. Wow.
It's it's
And
like it's crazy, and like I just don't understand why anybody would ever like fall for, I don't know, that kind of stuff. It's a lot of gaslighting, I think, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah.
But,
Well, that's a cultural gaslighting too. I mean, it's not just
right.
one dude doing it. And also, I mean, for me, I'm experiencing a whole other. Um, this is a generational thing as well. I mean, I'm 58, and
Mhm.
these are guys who have they grew up like pre-internet, like I did.
Mhm.
I'm comparing what I see on these Facebook groups that you're talking about that are mostly
Okay.
populated by millennial women and younger. And I'm
Mhm.
learning so much from these groups. I mean, they are they're sharp and fierce and
Mhm.
unrelenting and supportive and educative and groups like I am a rando on Tinder and here are my demands. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
great group where women just post men going out of their way to criticize women who don't know they exist.
Oh, okay.
That kind of thing. And just like guys, just behavior, online behavior in a way that it's like it's such a marvelous support group. These online
Yeah.
Facebook groups and others, and it's also a really great way for guys to like eavesdrop. Basically, a lot of these groups, the men
Mm.
let men in, and you can see what it's really like for us out there.
Mm.
And I think if there's anything I can say to men around this, it's like just start listening. And God, they're just so good at cock blocking themselves. Basically,
It's
I mean, it's
true.
not.
Yeah.
It's really, and our expectations are so low at this point. I mean, there's a part of me
Mhm.
that's really very, very depressed that I even have something called a feminist kink profile that I felt the need to like
Mm.
do something that is so like crazy and extreme. It's not crazy and extreme to demand feminism, to expect it
Yeah.
at all. I mean, it's a bottom line. So I just wonder how much of this is like we're entering very scary political times where younger
Mhm.
generations are kind of embracing this neoconservatism, this
Right?
pickup
Yeah.
artist culture, which
Mhm.
is relatively recent in dating history. I mean, no, actually, it's not. It's ancient, but
Yeah.
it's been commodified and packaged in a kind of a
Yes.
new, very very toxic way.
So what's your overall, I guess, impression, major takeaway from the experiment?
My overall major impression takeaway is
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Is there one? I guess for my personal life, my personal dating life,
Mhm.
I'm not feeling really hopeful about finding someone in France, which is kind of has to do with where I may be going with my next experiment, which is comparing Paris to another major American city, and
Mm.
seeing what the outcome is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Don't do Korea either.
okay, no, 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 no. It would definitely
Don't
be
come here.
it would definitely be somewhere back in the U.S. But the whole experiment to get one date
Mhm.
took 905 swipes. When I met my boyfriend, the one I was dating for a year and a half, it took
Mhm.
50 dates to find him. He was around date 50 or so, a couple of years.
Wow. And then, what advice would you give to people who are seeking partners via like dating apps?
Well, there are these Facebook groups that I think are really
Mhm.
helpful. I mean, just the
Mhm.
community, the support, the knowing that you're not alone, the safety aspect of it is really great. I mean, really, there's two camps for advice. You can't give the same advice to men and women, or
Mm.
when I'm also talking very generically here, men and women. I'm not honoring all of the many different gender expressions and sexualities here. I'm being quite
Mhm.
reductive in all of this. But there's one piece of advice that works for both is that you just be really, really faithful to yourself in your profile.
Mhm.
Just be very clear about who you are and what you want and hold yourself to that.
Mhm.
We invest all of our hopes and dreams in online dating, and then, we really let that cloud our judgment. I think one of the things that women struggle with frequently is kind of feeling like we are the object of a fantasy
Mm,
that is becomes more intense in the online environment.
mhm,
Particularly for men, I would be like, like chill. Don't let your hopes cloud your judgment, and
mhm.
also understand that we know, just basically, don't be a dick. I mean, it's really that's what I
Simple,
can say.
simple.
It's pretty simple. I mean, it's like just stop chaining the conversation to your penis. And like it's amazing how quickly that happens, and you see this on the online groups
Mhm,
where you can be talking about spackling a hole in the ground, and it'll be, oh yeah, okay, it'll be about the penis suddenly.
mm.
Anything though, and I guess that's again, the bar is low when that's the advice to
Very
men.
low.
Don't be a dick.
So low, but yet so insurmountable, kinda like on a like, if for some reason it just seems really challenging even though it's very simple.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, it
hopefully
does
someday
take,
we'll get there.
yes, we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm feeling, I do feel, I mean, I do feel hopeful because also these groups, for example, there's all of this cynicism. There really
Mm,
is there. There's people who have been hurt and burned, and they get harassed and um,
mm,
abused by strangers. However, there's always this, I want to say, a cloud of, there's hope. There's hope that
mm.
always is lingering. And when there are stories, I was in one group where members of the group found each other through the group, and
Aw.
met in real life and fell in love in real life, and this whole group of like 50,000 embittered women were like, oh,
Right,
everyone
yeah.
just, we just like came together, and it was huge. So I guess it's, trying not to let it wreck your spirit too. That's a
Mm.
piece of advice that I have to wake up every morning and look in the mirror and tell myself that too.
It can happen, it can happen.
Yeah.
And then and I believe, so you're writing a memoir about your dating experiences. Would you like to share some excerpts with our listeners?
Oh, I have an excerpt about
Uh-huh.
my the Kiss First experiment. I guess I could call it an experiment.
Uh-huh.
This is a brand new project. I've been writing these vignettes about my dating life and putting them on Facebook literally for 10 years, and um,
Mm.
folks have been asking me to put it together into some kind of collection, and I just really wasn't able to find a way into it. But recently, it's just kind of coming out, and so
Mm.
the working title is "How to Fuck a Feminist,"
Oh,
and
okay.
yes,
I
and
like it.
it is, interestingly, I thought it was going to be something of a manual, and as it turns out, it's the word fuck is flexible, as we know. It's very
Right.
has multi uses, and so the meaning "how to fuck a feminist" is coming out sideways in all kinds of interesting ways. But this was before the pandemic, and I had my new Kiss First experiment. My first Kiss First date was a Tantra practitioner I found on OkCupid. In the course of our online flirting, he introduced me to a new word, époustouflante, breathtaking. Given the stakes of the experiment, I had ratcheted up my pre screening process. My photo standards were less forgiving. Show me those teeth. And I was drawing out the texting phase to reduce the risk of ending up mouth to mouth with some wacko. Tantra guy seemed a good place to start. On my way to the bridge, I wondered what the hell I'd say to this stranger before he kissed me. Bonsoir is what I said. What he said, approaching me with a confident smile, was époustouflante, waiting to pronounce the word until his lips were a centimeter from mine. But he didn't kiss me. He didn't kiss me. He hovered his lips over my mouth, and he breathed, and I breathed, and our breaths mingled deliciously. Then he brought his lips to my cheek, to my neck, brushing but still not kissing, and I gasped a little, and his hands wrapped around me and settled at the small of my back, and he pulled my hips toward his to let me know he was really quite hard, and yet he still wasn't kissing me. Still, we stood at the railing, overlooking the canal, clenched in the world's most erotic non kiss for what, 3 minutes? 5 minutes? His hands inside my coat, my hands on his chest. itching to open the buttons until I couldn't take his tantric tease a moment longer, and crushed with desire, I lifted my mouth to meet his, and finally we kissed. Tantra Man delivered a terrible, horrible, awful kiss.
Oh, no.
The kiss of a person who really dislikes kissing. Wet and soft and shapeless and timid, without direction, without confidence, dead lips, flaccid tongue.
Ugh.
Mr. Kiss number 2 was much younger than me. I found him at the top of the bridge, leaning against the railing, waiting for me and smiling. He didn't move. He waited for me to walk into his arms. Salut, toi, he said, and reached for my waist with a gesture so casual and sweet, it was as though we were married. I leaned into him, and we were kissing. He tasted good and smelled nice, and he knew what a kiss should be. And then he pulled back and laughed, and he said, let's get a drink. We sat alongside the canal for a half an hour and talked, and then I took him home, and we fucked like bunnies. But he made love like a young man, in a hurry to please his cock. I don't remember if I slept with Mr. 3, but I do remember his kiss. We met at the base of the bridge under a street lamp. In our text exchanges, he'd said, let's not speak, no words, just lips. Perfect, I texted back. And when I arrived, I smiled, and he held out his arms, and without breaking stride, I walked right into them, pressed my pelvis against his, and he held me by the back of the neck, and there was nothing but nothing around us as he kept going and going with a tenderness so urgent it felt as though we both understood Paris would crumble to bits at our feet the moment we stopped. I'll never forget sleeping with Mr. 4, because at 1 o'clock in the morning, he took a call from his mother, leaping from my bed to answer his cell. He wandered around my apartment in the nude, reporting on his head cold and the medication he'd picked up at the pharmacy that afternoon. Exasperated, I got out of bed to use the bathroom, and when I came back to the kitchen, he was still chatting nakedly with Mama, his penis hard, and to my horror, he pulled me toward him to rub it against me, his mouth at my neck, his mother's voice in his ear. When he hung up, he was confused at my laughter. I was making no effort to hide my unkind amusement. But he protested, if I don't answer, she'll just keep calling. Mr. 5 was an insanely handsome financial analyst. I don't remember why we never had a second date. I wish I could. He was tall, well-dressed, intelligent. Throughout our text exchanges, he'd insisted on maintaining the formal address, the vous. It is with great pleasure, madame, that I accept your kind invitation to kiss you on the bridge. He was so beautiful in his pictures that I halfway expected to discover he had a false profile, and I was like steeling myself to back away if necessary. Showing up as advertised, he kissed me expertly, and I went wet like a champ. I stepped away, hot flashing menopausally, and gave the conversation a polite 12 minutes before I took him by the hand and led him directly to my bed. He was naked within 4 minutes of entering my place, addressing my pussy in the familiar. Mr. 6. Mr. 6 was an artist, a hipster, a storyteller, and probably married. By accident, we ran into one another early before we got to the bridge. Hi, I said. He'd just come off the train from Brussels. He placed his bags on the sidewalk and reached for my face. We were blocking foot traffic. He held me by the cheek and proceeded to deliver the world's most deliberate kiss. It was nuanced and sensitive and responsive and also insistent. It had peaks and valleys, moments of calm and moments of urgency, moments of resolve and moments of distress. I was on the edge of my seat. Fixed there on the sidewalk, we ignored the people elbowing past us as we followed the narrative arc of this kiss. But when it became clear over drinks that it was time to advance the plot to the privacy of my apartment, Mr. 6 mumbled an excuse and went away.
Aw.
My kiss first dates ended with Pierre, lucky number 7, beginning the most sensual and tumultuous romantic relationship of my life, followed by the hardest breakup. This despite an underwhelming first kiss, which was that of a teenager. A boy wrapped up in a fantasy, his brain having sped past foreplay and his tongue following suit, aggressive and insistent. At the foot of the bridge sat the famous Hôtel du Nord from the film. Later, Pierre told me he'd had a fiery coquette Arletty in his head. In any case, I startled and withdrew, disappointed. We leaned against the railing, chatting awkwardly for a few minutes until he suggested we go get that drink. But just as we were approaching the staircase to the street, Pierre said, wait. With one of the large, strong hands for which I would come to ache over the following months, he cupped my neck, directed my face toward his, and kissed me straight into a canyon of passion against which I was helpless from that moment forward. To me, romantic tumult has never been attractive and remained unattractive for the duration of our relationship, but none of that mattered because for the next year with Pierre, I lived in a state of terrible, unrelenting desire.
Wow.
Mhm.
I'm very
Thank you.
the the mom one though.
I know, right?
It's like, oh my god.
Dude.
Like I mean, talking to your mom is one thing, but talking to your mom when you're hard and then that's something
Yeah,
else.
it was
That's something else.
creepy. Yeah.
Oh man.
The
And then
phone
he
rang
and then he was
twice,
like,
actually. Mom had a special ringtone, and the
"Oh,
phone rang once, and then when in the middle of the things, and then 5 minutes later rang again, and then I understood why he had stopped, because he knew 5 minutes later his mom was going to call back, and that's when he got out of
oh,
bed. 1
wow."
o'clock on a Friday night, date night. Mama's calling.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
But
but again, a
yeah,
red flag of whatever, dodged a bullet there.
there you go.
They revealed
Yeah.
themselves
And that
early.
was very beautiful. And I think it's an excellent experiment and I might have to try that next time I start like dating cuz yeah, there's nothing worse than a disappointing kiss.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it took a lot of, I don't know, I kind of had to gather up all my courage to do
Mm.
that. It was fun and it was, romantic,
Mm.
um, but it also was risky, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was in danger because I really was screening well, but,
Mhm.
risky, like you just end up with a bad kiss, bad breath, or
Yeah.
someone smelled awful or.
Yeah. I went one of the most more recent dates I went on, which was quite a long time ago, was this guy. And like he wasn't super cute, but he was very funny. Like our text exchange was fabulous. And then I met him and when he took off his mask, so we're still all masked up here, just immediate repulsion. Like, sorry,
Mm,
guy. He's still a nice guy, but just like I don't know, like halitosis or something. Like,
mhm.
the crevices between his teeth were like black, and I was like, wow, when was the last time you flossed? 20
Yeah,
years ago? Like, oh, and I was like, and I could smell like when he would talk and exhale, I could smell his breath from across the table, and I'd be
yeah.
very fun. Like we hung out for a while. Like it was a pretty long date, but just like no second date.
Mhm,
Oh,
mhm.
I just
Oh,
can't
those are
can't get
so
over the
awkward,
oh.
so awkward. Yes. But it worked out for me. I didn't run into any bad breath guys and, had a great time.
And ultimately, and I mean 7 dates, and then on the 7th he found a boyfriend. I think
Yeah.
that's pretty successful.
Yeah, it is. Maybe I'll once it's hard to know when you can start kissing strangers again in these
Right.
times. So I guess my feminist, kink profile is substitute for that, something
Mm,
a little risky, something a little bit dangerous and out there, slightly dangerous. I guess
yeah.
I don't have my tolerance for danger is pretty low.
Stay safe out there, everybody
Yes,
listening.
stay safe out there for sure.
Stay safe. So, anyway, I think that's all we have time for today. So, Shannon, thank you so much for joining us, for joining me. I know it's late there, and I really appreciate you taking the time and hopping on with us. So, before you go, is there any organizations or websites or social media pages you'd like to introduce our listeners to?
My website where you can find out about my writing, and I'm an independent writing coach and manuscript consultant.
Hmm.
Shannonesque.com it's called.
Hmm.
And there's information about actually, I'm doing a workshop here in Paris in October, a writing workshop for a
Oh,
whole week, coming to Paris and helping people with their memoirs and novels, writing in Paris.
whoa,
It's called the
really
Real
cool.
Paris Writing Workshop, and it's meant to kind of discourage that whole Emily in Paris
Oh,
trend that we have going on. We're like going to the real Paris and not the one that is supposedly under the Eiffel Tower, the place where real people live. I'm on some Facebook groups. For example, I'm a rando on Tinder and here are my demands.
hmm.
Another one that I like a lot is called Let's Not Date.
Hmm.
And there's a third, oh yes, men talking to themselves online, which is really wonderful.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check all those out. On Facebook, right?
Those are all on Facebook, yeah.
Oh, awesome. So again, thank you so much for coming on today. And thank you too to our listeners for your continued support. If you like today's episode, please like, comment, subscribe, and share on whatever platform you're listening to this on. It really helps us out. And consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Patrons get access to exclusive content, AMAs, and more. All proceeds will be donated to the Center for Reproductive Rights in Cool Earth. All links in the description. And check out our website and social media pages for updates and blog posts. Also, links in the description. So anyway, so Shannon, thanks again.
Thank you. Great
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, I know. I said before we started recording that it was going to take like 30 minutes, but it's
Oh my
taken
God,
much
look at
longer.
us. We just kept
I know.
going.
But it's great. Yeah, it's a really nice conversation. I think I'm really looking forward to this memoir, and like I really want to give like the whole thing a read, because
Yeah,
I think
thanks.
it's yeah, pretty representative of many people's dating experiences, especially with like today. So
Well, the plot is still unfolding. It doesn't have an end yet.
ah, that's even better. I
Yeah.
like a nice plot that's kind of, how can I say, like very dynamic like that. That's
Mhm.
great. So anyway, thanks again, and
All right. Thank
see.
you.
Thanks and goodbye, everyone.
That's it for today, folks.
Thanks so much for tuning in.
And as always, please support this work by subscribing and donating to our cause at www.teamgetoveryit.com.
Donors get access to specific content like stickers, t-shirts, and postcards from our journey.
You can donate for as little as $5 and the benefits build from there.
Go to our website for more info.
Or find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Team Get Over It.
Thanks for listening.
And catch us next time on Get Over It.